Now that we have our AWS CodeStar project up and running, we're going to learn how to take a look at the code, see if we can modify anything in there, and then see what's actually happening with the full deployment. So we have the overview here, and we're going to see a few of these in the upcoming videos, but you can essentially use Cloud9 for the cloud-based IDE. You can choose other IDEs that you want to use, like Visual Studio, for example. You can track issues, which we'll see, of course, and then add people to your project. But what I want to do is I want to go to repository here, and then if I scroll down, we can see that the repository details, this is the name here, the provider is GitHub, last modified. I can clone this repository if I want to right from AWS CodeStar, or I can clone it from GitHub, which we'll see in just a second. And then we can see the most recent commit, pull requests, etc. So while we're waiting for this to be updated, because we're going to want to look at the pipeline, let's go to GitHub. So I'm on my GitHub here, and if I go ahead and I go to my profile, let me just zoom in here, I can go to repositories, and then under repositories, I see now that I have a Python Cloud Skills project course repository, because remember, when we created the AWS CodeStar project, we created this repository with it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that repository, and boom, as you can see, there's a bunch of different stuff in here already. This is essentially, like the app spec, the build spec, all of this stuff. This is what's actually needed for the AWS CodeStar project. Now, if I go into Hello World here and I go down to application, we can see that, there's a full-blown Flask application right here and ready for us, which is awesome. So what we can do here, for example, is, we can go in here and we can edit this file, and then maybe we want to create a new route. So we'll say at application.route, all right? We'll go in here and we'll add in a new route. We'll say /home, for example, and then the method, we're going to use a get method, which is just going to retrieve data for us, right? And then we'll go ahead and we'll create a new function here. So we'll call it def home. Go ahead and we'll create our function. And then maybe we just want home to return you are home. And that's that. So before we actually commit this code, I'm going to go back to CodeStar here. And as you can see, we can now see the pipeline. So we can see that the project has been provisioned and a few things have happened. It's still in progress, but we could see the source. So it pulled from GitHub. We can see the full build. It did a build via AWS CodeBuild. And now it's doing the deployment process for generating the change set, executing the change set, and then deploying via AWS CodeBuild. Now, the one thing that I do want to point out here is that the full CI/CD solution in AWS is, AWS CodeCommit, AWS CodeBuild, AWS CodePipeline, AWS CodeDeploy. If you look at the services, you're going to be able to see all of that stuff. So essentially, what CodeStar is doing is, instead of you having to go through and modifying and updating and creating all of that stuff in CodeCommit, CodeDeploy, CodePipeline, etc., CodeStar is actually doing all of that for you. So it's setting up AWS CodeBuild. It's setting up AWS CodeDeploy. It's doing all of that for you versus you having to go and do it, which would definitely, quadruple the time essentially, because you have to go through and set up each service. But with CodeStar, it automatically does that for you. So let's go ahead and wait for all this to be completed, and we'll be right back. And as we can see, the build was completely successful. The deployment was completely successful. So let's go ahead and head back over to our Python code here. And what I'm going to do is, remember we added in the you are home return. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to commit that. Now, once that's committed, I'm going to head over back to repository, and I'm just going to refresh this here really quick. And as we can see, it now shows the most recent commit for our application. And then if I head back over to pipeline really quick and I scroll down, we can now see that there's a new build process happening because we just committed some code. So it's doing that full continuous deployment for us.